welcome to another edition of Blaze Podcast. I'm Hari, your host. And one of the most important aspects of entrepreneurship, which we often miss, is the ability to think vertical. Now, when I say this, it's not in a pessimistic way. Most of the ideators or entrepreneurs, when they start to get excited about starting up, they immediately go horizontal thinking, which is required, but not at the ideation stage. When you're starting the company, managing your operations, that's when the horizontal is important. But otherwise, to validate your idea, to be strong in what you offer, find the appropriate value proposition, I feel the vertical knowledge, the domain knowledge is very, very important in understanding. Yeah, you can tell me, Hari, I want to start a photo studio, but even for that, you need to understand what's photography, what is photography equipment, and all the stuff. I want to start. I've been dreaming of starting a podcast studio myself in Bangalore, and it's not so easy. I mean, you need to find the right equipment, right things to come together. So personally, I feel the vertical knowledge is very important when one starts, and that's where I focus my podcast on, because there are many podcasts in the market. Predominantly everybody is been there, done that, right? And you talk to those people and they'll tell you, I've done this way, I've done this way. It might resonate to me as an entrepreneur, or it might not resonate, but I want to talk to people who have been doing it and not been there already, and all of us are in the journey. And Scotty, I'll get to you in a minute, but the kind of people I'm speaking to and people I want to talk to are the people who are doing it, so that their problems or their situations resonate with a new entrepreneur and gives them more balance. So for example, I was talking to somebody 10 years ago there was this company who helped us this way. That company doesn't exist now, so it doesn't really make any connect to me in that perspective. So that's where we wanted the Blaze podcast to be different. And we talked to bootstrap founders, legacy builders, authors, change makers, and executors. So that's how the name Blaze came into picture. And we distribute between three of us and going and talking to people and bring the best value proposition to the podcast, to the 60 minutes or 90 minutes they're going to listen. Adds a lot of value to the listener. So in this podcast, I want to introduce Scotty Allen. I have I've known Scotty for a year now, but I had to go back deep into understanding where he's from. So he's been he's a podcaster himself. If you are a founder, bootstrap entrepreneur, you should subscribe to his podcast. Already 86 episodes down the line. I think I have got through half and I have to get through the remaining half. Very, very valuable information in a short amount of time. So these conversations, my conversations are longer, but Scotty's podcasts are more up to the point, A, B, C, and you get the value out of it.
It's just to match my attention span. Yeah.
So that's what he does too. But otherwise, if you look at Scotty's journey, he's moved to Melbourne 23, 24 years ago now. And since then, he's been here, made Australia his home.
So I met my wife in LA.
Okay.
In a year that I will not mention, and she's from outside Sydney. So when we first got married, we came and I actually went to uni in Wollongong in New South Wales, and worked in Sydney and Canberra for a while. Moved to Melbourne maybe 14 years ago.
Oh, okay.
But I've been in Australia like over 30 years.
Yeah. 30 years?
I was a child bride.
That's a good one. That's a good one. But what I noticed, Scotty, is you've been predominantly educationalist, right? Been leading teams at various schools and things like that. I'll come. Why did you do something in EdTech? I'll come to it a little later before you go in. But I would want to focus more on the last thing, what Scotty has been in last two things, actually. The product buzz. I want to start conversing from there. How did the idea of product buzz come? And what made you move away from being an educational technologist or educationist, why didn't you do something in the edtech space? Why did you go horizontal? So why did you go vertical? Why did you go horizontal? And what's the idea behind Product Buzz?
Sure. If I can explain briefly, like how I got into technology, you would never guess, but like I have been a performer. I worked at Disneyland, like that sort of stuff.
I did see that.
And I met my wife in that space. So when I did my education degree and then started applying for jobs, it was very much like all singing, all dancing. And the first job that I got, I arrived and they were like, "Oh, by the way, you're also the computer coordinator."
Okay.
And I was like, okay. I mean, I know how to use one, but this is like, this is back when we had like a computer in every classroom and we were just about to bring the internet in. And so that really got me started on that digital transformation journey. And a lot of the leadership that I had in independent schools was really about bringing that kind of change in, not just the hardware. It was about how it could transform learning, but doesn't automatically. And I'd been in leadership roles in a number of schools at kind of the assistant principal level, and I knew that I didn't want to be a principal, because it's a different skill set. It's a different. It's too removed from me from the actual doing of the teaching, and so I was really privileged to work at a school here in Melbourne that asked me to come and do a project. And I told them at the time, I'm happy to come and do that, but I'm looking to move out of education, so I'm not going to be here forever. And I was able to start that kind of process without having to do it by stealth, right?
Excellent.
And I ended up moving into an ed tech that was focused on state secondary schools in a couple of states, and originally as a training manager, and it moved into a product role because I had that domain expertise, but then also that change management understanding. And from there, that really led to working with a couple of other ed techs, and then working with a company that had a number of verticals, including education. So working across still in learning, but working across education, health, hospitality, not-for-profit, and that gave me that wider experience and understanding. So that's the pre-Product Buzz bit.
Okay.
When I've been in a couple of startups that have gone on to become unicorns and all that good stuff, and the last one, when it finished, I didn't feel like I could get back on the hamster wheel, so to speak. And so I just started doing some consulting, and I do a lot of content production because I worked on the product marketing side. So, and I started working with early stage founders. I'd been the first product manager in a couple of startups, but it was already at that point where they had funding and they had some degree of product market fit and runway, and not at that real, bootstrapped, everything could fly apart tomorrow sort of stage. So I was working in the content space with some of these early stage founders and starting to realize what was really missing in this space in terms of education, in a sense of what product market fit is. I mean, I don't really love that term. I think it's, we can talk about it later.
Okay.
But the kind of challenging of assumptions that you have to be prepared to do to be successful. And so you see people that have domain expertise but not tech or startup experience that will come in with a belief that they have got an idea that's going to add value, and they will build it or pay someone to build it without doing the work that a product manager or good product leader does at those bigger companies to make sure that we're building something that people want. And a couple of the early people that I worked with before Product Buzz, I could see that they were like using their own money and they were going to run out of it, and they were building something that didn't really have commercial potential. And so I had an idea about some form of fractional or virtual product manager piece, and I was building my content agency at the time. So I was like, who does that? Who does two things at once? Put it aside. And then one of my content clients really got into a bind with a CTO who left with really not having done anything. and she reached out basically to say, I've got to put this project on hold because I have to find a new CTO. And I kind of took that idea out of the drawer that I put it in and said, look, if you do that as a super non-technical founder, you're going to be in exactly the same boat as you have been, where you didn't know what was going on, and it wasn't until push came to shove that you realized that the work that you thought was being done wasn't being done. I am a product manager. This is the space that I work in, and I could help you just maybe like for a couple of days to look at what you've got and then work out what you need rather than someone else coming in and starting again. And she said, that is exactly what I need. Send me an invoice. I'll pay it today. And so I started doing a bit of that with there was no bus. We don't actually have a bus, by the way. It's a metaphor, important to cover. And from there, it's really grown from working with individual startups, and a lot of the early clients were people where they had built something that probably they'd gone too far and they didn't have that sort of product market fit. And part of what I realized early on was in order to work with integrity with these people, there's a lot of either intentionally or unintentionally predatory services, agencies, consultants out there that basically make a living by encouraging people to spend money and more money on bad ideas. And so my whole idea of Product Bus was, we're not going to do development. We will link with developers if it's appropriate, but not all of these ideas should ever make it off the whiteboard. And so we're going to work out how to get that knowledge and understanding of product thinking out there, even if it means that we have to tell some people, based on the work that we've done, we would recommend not continuing to do this. And yeah, it's been 3 and a bit years, and it's constantly learning.
Excellent.
Constantly learning.
So through the Product Bus, Scotty, do you do it one-on-one, or you run it as a cohort? How many people are in a cohort, or how many founders are in a cohort?
So one thing that I've found, you do things that don't scale to work out what to do. And some of the early clients that I had were people where ultimately, not that they were beyond help, but they shouldn't have been paying anybody to continue to work on their their piece. And I realized that early intervention, I'm an educationalist, right? So we know that if we can get in early and give somebody help before it gets too entrenched, and that's where we've shifted our program side to that really early founder stage. And we do that in cohorts or groups. We work with other organizations that run accelerators and entrepreneurship programs to either design programs or bring that mentoring to it. But it's it is very exciting when you kind of are working with people that it's still so fresh that they haven't mucked it up yet. And to kind of see them realize oh, I may not be onto a winner here. I need to kind of do that work. Once you have kind of invested, it's so hard to let go. So I try not to get into those kind of individual client relationships now, where really somebody's got something that is not going to work and they're not prepared to let it go yet, because I don't want to take money from those people, and it doesn't end up in a happy outcome anyway. We do work with individual clients on more complex projects, but we now have some free content that we try and get people to work through first, because it's a good indicator of whether they're going to like working with us, or whether they're prepared to actually do the work. Because a lot of people, unfortunately, are looking for the magic bean to fix all the problems that they haven't been, or either haven't been prepared to put time into fixing, or want to kind of jump around. And when it comes to, do you have, it's a pretty simple thing. Do you have something that people are prepared to pay for or not? And are you, and a lot of times people are so fixed on the solution that they had in their mind that they will keep pouring money on it, even when the whole thing's on fire. And so we don't get into those. Try really hard.
I hear you. Yeah. That's an amazing journey. And it's been 3 years, right? So the ideas you have worked, uh, give me give me an idea which you felt when it came to you, uh, it's amazing, their approach is wrong, and you had to bring them back on track.
Sure.
And give me a situation where the idea is amazing, the approach is amazing, but you had to fix the founders.
Okay, I have to speak generally because obviously a lot of our work is
Right.
covered under
Right.
all those good legal
Correct.
agreements. Yeah. One, I can generalize an example of how we have helped some
Sure.
people. Often, and this is partly in your introduction, people have an idea that starts somewhere, and then the more that they talk about it to different people, they have all these different possible applications of it. It could be teachers, but it could be farmers, it could be lawyers, etc. And so then you look at and they might have picked up some clients in a couple of those spaces, but they haven't actually found a consistent customer profile.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing that we have managed to do really well with some people in that space is help them focus on the ideal space that they should be growing in. Because you can have people that might say, we're scaling, we've got 10 clients. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the 10 clients, they're all different profiles, and basically they're custom implementations, mm-hmm. custom sales processes, custom usage of the product, custom development to make it work for their context. Mm-hmm. And what they're not getting then is that groundswell of users in a particular space that are going to tell each other. Mm-hmm. So we've helped a couple of edtechs in particular, and we work across the board, but edtech is a very, very crowded space everywhere, including in Australia. Everybody's making a platform, but we definitely don't need to solve the problem of not enough platforms. Mm-hmm. Right? And so we've helped a couple of our clients turn their platform into a plugin to an existing platform.
Excellent.
And because one of the things that happens in any industry is you might have your advocate, your person that is like, we need this, we should buy this. But the bigger it is as a piece of tech, the more stakeholders that are involved. And the moment that it's new, it's not like something that's an add-on to an existing product, it's new, then you have other stakeholders, from the IT side, from the finance side, that will come in with legit reasons like, why do we need another platform? This is, we've already bought 3 that we don't use. We've helped clients find that platform that is most in use in the space that they're wanting to work in and target the owners of those platforms. Mm-hmm. To get proof of concept projects of this is how we integrate with your platform. Mm-hmm. And essentially, because you've got someone there who already owns a budget, already owns that product, they probably don't have to go through as many hoops to buy a plugin. Mm-hmm. And with proof of concepts, often we've said to that person, what's the kind of budget that you can approve without having to kind of go through all the hoops, and then we'll do this kind of proof of concept project for you. Another type of success is where we have helped people who have a great product that solves a great problem, but is the problem that they solve is not a problem that the buyer in the organization is going to be motivated by. So, we're solving this problem for this person in the organization. They, are frothing at the bit to have this, but they're not a buyer. And the people who are buying don't really care about their problems. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's nothing, you don't have to change the product. It might just be the messaging to look at, okay, this solves this problem, but you're kind of burying the lead here because it also solves this problem for the person that's going to sign the check. Mm-hmm. So by changing like either who you're selling to or how you empower that champion to sell to that person and get more focused, sometimes it's hard for people to make that shift, even when it's nothing to do. You don't have to change your product, but it's more like their idea of what they're doing. They don't want to let go. Mm-hmm. So those are some good examples. Mm-hmm. Where things often don't work and we've changed the way that we structure our one-on-one consulting projects. We used to
Okay.
do we will do a review of where you're up to or what your idea is. We'll come to an alignment on strategy, and then we will work with you for X period of time. We call it a bus pass because we're the bus, metaphorical bus. The and execute.
Mhm.
But we've had a couple situations where we've done the work, and it's not just us telling you what we think. Someone comes in and says, "I want to sell to this persona
Mhm.
in the business," and you go away and work out the situation I just said. This persona loves your product; they can't buy anything.
Mhm.
The person that does buy things is not motivated by that.
Mhm.
You don't have to change your product, but you've got to market to these people.
Mhm.
Or that's the best case scenario. Or worst case scenario, the value that you're delivering doesn't solve a big enough problem for the people that are motivated to buy.
Mhm.
So you're going to have to shift here or try to sell there. And again, we go and do market research. We talk to actual people, and we've had a couple of occasions where at the end people will say, "We think you're right, but we don't really want to do that."
Correct.
Which is totally fine.
Totally fine.
Totally
Correct.
fine. But where it has been challenging is when we've got that kind of, okay, now we've got this time that we're meant to do once we agree, and so now we do that research piece,
Mhm.
and then we present it and we give options of what we could do, but they can also kind of take it away, do it with someone else, or go, "Oh, those guys are idiots," and throw it in the bin, because it is sometimes very difficult. And I find it really challenging because we're logicking. We're not just saying we don't think you can do this.
Correct.
We're saying, so you want to sell to this type of person. We've spoken to 20 of them, and 15 of them said that they love your product. They all said, "I don't get to buy software."
Mhm.
The person who buys software over here doesn't care about it's not that kind of hair on fire problem that
Mhm.
they're going to be motivated to spend on, but this is the messaging, or this is the other feature that will sell to them. And to me, I think as a product manager, when you work that out, you're like, great, well, either we've got to go just change tech completely and sell directly to that person, or we've got to work out how we help you get that person on board. So I find it strange when people, like, I haven't had somebody say, "We think you're wrong." It's more, "Yeah, I get it, but I don't want to do that.
Correct.
I still want to sell to them. So can you give me the market research
Correct.
for them?" And it's like,
Correct.
well, no, because it would be a lie.
Correct.
Because we just did all the work and told you that
Because people are emotionally connected to their idea instead of practically being connected. I've had n number of experiences. Um, uh, Recently, I also teach at quite a few institutions on product strategy and ideation kind of things. And they were there's this young students who came. They have amazing ideas, but they picked the wrong. One of them picked the wrong domain.
Yeah.
And when they said, "Sir, can you help us out?" I said, first of all, um, don't get into this domain. It's very, very complicated, and you have to deal with a lot of high educated intellectuals,
Mm.
and you're too young to deal with them. So their thought process and your thought process will be very different. You're thinking you're going to crack the code, but it's not going to crack the code. I said, think about it. If you still want to go ahead, please let me know what I can help you with.
Yeah.
But I would highly recommend don't take that journey. So I left it to them and see. Yeah, people get emotionally connected, Scotty, and that's where the whole disconnect with. Passion is one thing, wanting to solve is something else, and being emotionally connected.
Yeah.
That's when you can't make practical decisions which are required to run the business.
I think too, like sometimes depending on what people's experience has been, if they've never
Correct.
They've never been the person responsible, or they haven't kind of seen when stuff doesn't work, they don't really have an understanding. Like I find people that come from bigger organizations into startups, it's a really hard transition because if they've only worked in enterprise, then they don't even really know the machine around them that helps
Correct.
them do what they do.
Correct.
And so the assumptions that they make either about what they're going to be able to accomplish, who they're going to be able to sell to, are totally out of whack.
Correct.
And but I find the best people, honestly, to work with are people that have already failed at something.
Correct.
Because they've seen somebody, they've been a part of
Correct.
somebody else failing at it.
Correct.
And then they realize, because before that, you'll have people that they've got 100K burning in their pocket to build an app. You quote them 5K for strategy, and they'll be like, "Oh, that's a lot." I mean, I think we already know because my mom loves it, and but then people where either they may not have built a tech product before, but they're already business people.
Correct.
That own their own business. Right?
Correct.
Yeah. That actually understand where the money comes from.
Correct.
That understand the de-risking value of it. And the people that I love working with as individual clients are people where they're like, I don't want to do this if it's not going to work. I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do this if somebody else out there is already doing it. And I know that I don't have either the skill or the time to work that out. So I'd rather. I've never had to say to anybody like, yeah, you just shouldn't do this, without an option of where to go. But sometimes it can be, their idea of what they want to achieve commercially, and understanding that the idea that they have is actually not going to match that. There's obviously a huge education gap when it comes to how investment really works and where money really comes from. And so a lot of people are there's, to me, it's like mystical thinking, right? Of that I haven't worked out how this is going to make money, but someone's going to give me money to work that out. And so their whole premise is based on, we're going to have to raise, when they haven't proven a case for it, right? Those are the really hard ones to kind of steer. And that's one reason why we've created some of the programs that we have, because they shouldn't be spending money on a one-on-one project. And if they're not prepared to actually do that kind of work and learning, and I think there's a vulnerability that's required to actually articulate your ideas and possibly be wrong, right? I've been a dad for a really long time, so I'm very accustomed to being wrong. I'm wrong all the time. It's definitely helped me. Like when you're like, okay, I might be wrong. But I think if when the more precious the thing is that you're holding, the harder it is to then go, I'm going to show you this. My analogy is, if a parent invited everyone around to meet their new baby and asked them to say out loud all the things that they didn't like about it, that would be bad. But that is exactly what you've got to be prepared to do with these ideas, is run it past people that you trust and really listen to the question, ask them their opinions, listen to the questions that they have, the things that are not so obvious, that have been clear in your mind. And that's where I find, because my tolerance for ambiguity is pretty high. I can kind of feel like, yeah, we've nailed it, and then someone will ask a question that's like, oh, details, but actually it's like, oh yeah, we've got to answer that question before we've nailed it. And if we're not prepared to do the work.
What's the percentage of people who come to you in terms of fresh college grads or first-time entrepreneurs, and versus people have tried but they didn't take things forward, now they think it's time and coming back, second time, third time entrepreneurs?
I would say that our programs are more first-time founders.
Okay.
And then our individual clients are, look, where we're doing a more extensive project now, are people that they've had some experience already. They actually see the value in the strategy, right? But one of the reasons why we've put a lot of work into that first audience is that they're the people that we can provide the most value to in terms of helping them make good decisions about letting ideas go, working out if they've actually got the risk appetite to do this in the first place, and kind of disabusing them of some of the notions of how stuff's going to get funded, because sometimes people don't, when they realize like, oh, this is going to be really hard, then they might either decide not to do it. And that's, at that stage, that actually is a great outcome. that is like, and that's why we don't do development, because if people do our cohort pieces and then they decide, you know what, this idea I don't think is right, or this whole startup game is not for me, that's a win.
Correct.
That's a win, right? It's a, and you know where I got that from. There's a podcaster in Tasmania, um, it's called the Small Business Podcast, right?
Okay.
And he has a side business helping people set up gin distilleries. Troy, his
Okay.
name is. And this is like right at the beginning of Product Bus, I heard this, where they used to do these courses where they would like help people get all the gear and set everything up. And then what they found was that a lot of the people actually didn't follow through with it because it's hard.
The gin distillery.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
building your own gin distillery is hard.
Got
It
it.
takes up a bathroom. It smells. It's sort of like, right? And so they changed it to a group course of like, here's what's going to be involved, and do this to decide whether or not this is for you. If you pay this for the course and then decide, you know what, I'm just going to keep getting my gin from Dan Murphy's, then that's a win, and that's a good investment, rather than spending all the money on the stuff and then realizing, oh, I don't want to do this, and I've bought all this kit and that sort of thing. And it really struck me how important that is in this space, because most people are ultimately, their idea is going to fail. We know that, right? That's
Correct.
the whole point. And so you've got to actually be okay with that. And product thinking to me is about learning how to fail fast.
Correct.
And some people, they really don't want to do that. They have this idea of what the worldwide phenomenon of their product is going to look like, but they don't want to do, or don't know how to do, steps 1 to 10. And therefore they're highly unlikely to be successful, because they're going to focus on the wrong things, spend money on the wrong things. And if you can help some people either realize, oh, I've got to do a lot more work on this, or realize I should keep my day job, that to me is a win. As well as the people that then realize, yeah, I really want to do this, and now I feel equipped to do this in a way where I'm just going to be a little bit more careful about how invested I get financially and emotionally.
Correct.
In my idea.
Correct. Well, I want to break the conversation into 3 parts, Scotty. First one, ideation, because I truly believe in the ideation part. And the remaining 2 parts we'll talk about growth, domestic and international, and also how, if anybody is building for outside Australia, what are in your experiences, what are the support systems available for them to take their product global, whatever. Okay. So when we look at the ideation piece, what do you truly differentiate between incremental innovation and truly disruptive innovation? How do you differentiate, and what can you say for ideators, for them to understand, are they truly creating something valuable, or are they truly creating something disruptive? Is there a mechanism? I know over the last decade or so, everywhere in the world, ideas are popping up. What clicks, doesn't click is a different thing. If you look at an example of the Bay Area, how innovation comes up there versus everywhere else in the world. I've done a video on this, how people are different out there. If you look at Bay Area, people spend time on their idea, and over a period of time, it picks up and it creates the value. Whereas what I noticed is outside the Bay Area, most of the entrepreneurs have an idea. They go behind the fundraise or money and things like that. And I mean, you and I know fundraise has a lot of parameters, and people usually invest in companies or people whom they know, or they have a connect, so that emotionally they have a security. Hey, my money is going in the right direction and things like that. So when ideators are thinking about doing something, how can they distinguish between a truly innovative idea and a truly market capturing idea or a path breaking idea?
I'll start answering that by sharing. I've got some red flags that if I hear people saying this, I realize they haven't done the work, right? The first one is it's a no brainer.
Because target access market?
Well, anything like people, when they say an idea and they're like, it's a no brainer. And you're like, oh, well, that there's no such thing. Like, because there's, I will hear ideas from stuff that's outside my domain expertise that I'm like, oh, that makes sense on the surface. Now we have to work out, like, A, are people already doing this? Have people tried to do this and it hasn't been successful, and why? Like, or is it that this isn't actually a problem we're solving because people won't pay, for it? So that's my first one. And then the second one is a little bit similar. It's like, no one else is doing this. The number of times, Harry, that I have had somebody, and actually did it yesterday, if somebody says no one else is doing this, I am instantly Googling whatever it is that you say. So it's like, vegan dog bowls. Like, right? And then you're like, actually there's 27 of them and one of them has the business name that you're using. Like, like, it's just like there's no such thing, because it's not just about the product. It is about, if it's a problem worth solving, then people are solving it in some way. They mightn't be solving it in the way that you're solving it. They might be solving it with a workaround or, something that doesn't really fit. But if nobody's doing it and no one's trying to solve this, then it's probably not a problem worth solving, right? And then the last red flag is we're going to have to educate the market about this, because I talk about, we want to try and find that hair on fire problem. If someone knows their hair is on fire, I have a great story about someone who didn't know their hair was on fire, but if you know your hair is on fire, you have no other problems to solve until that is solved.
Correct.
Right? You don't go, oh, well, first we might do some blah, blah, blah. You're like, well, I'll put my hair up. And so if we can find that problem, and find it consistently in the persona that we're selling to. But when people are like, yeah, we're going to have to really educate the market about this problem, I'm like, then you probably haven't landed on the problem that's worth solving. So to me, a lot of ideation is separating problem validation from solution validation. And ultimately, I read this the other day, and I'm sorry, I cannot attribute who said it. People that are really successful are not in love with their solution. They're obsessed with solving the problem they're trying to solve. Because part of really solving it is letting go of what you think the solution is. It's like, when your parents make you eat vegetables and don't realize, like, oh, maybe we could have, taken a moment to work out which ones you like eating instead of just making you eat the ones that I like. The revelation that I had when I was like 20, that like, we never ate stuff that my parents didn't like.
True.
All the stuff, stuff that got shoved down my throat.
Get it.
That it's like we never, ate this because they didn't like it. It kind of those things we can just decide. We know what people need, and we don't do that work. There's no replacement for getting out and talking to people, and it really surprises me how people will say, we're building this and we're selling it to pharmacists. And then you say, how many pharmacists have you spoken to about this? And they'll be like, oh, my uncle's a pharmacist.
No pharmacist. Got it.
And you're like, and they're like, that's it. And sometimes they want to do anything but actually go out and talk to pharmacists. And so then you really got to ask, like, who is this for? This is just what you think they need. You haven't worked that out. And as you said, it takes time. You actually have to work on your problem. And you might have an idea. Whenever someone says to me, like, I'm building an app or I'm building a platform, my first question is like, how do you know that it should be an app? How do you know that
it should be a platform?
How do you know that it should be a platform? Because like we said, no one has the problem of not enough platforms, right? And so you can take medicine that somebody might need and put it in a delivery mechanism that they don't want, and then they won't take it. And so, but I think there's a lot of, and it can be hard too sometimes, that if you have an ICP, like an ideal customer that is not really easy to find for market research. So like, obviously, if I'm selling to lawyers, or I'm selling, to people that run a physio practice. I've got some ready-made mechanisms to try and find out where they are. But we had something last year where we needed to talk to people that administer NDIS systems. They don't have Facebook groups. They don't have Reddit threads. Actually, trying to find places where you can kind of get a group feel and opinion, it can be hard. And it was really we're going to have to go out and rock up to some places and see if we can meet some people who are prepared to talk to us. And that to me, that curiosity is key. A lot of people in this space are not curious. They're not actually learners. I think that's what makes a really good product manager.
If when you said curious, this is my favorite quote, and I have it as a WhatsApp status. Ted Lasso says, "You're curious,
yes.
not judgmental."
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I love Ted. I love Ted Lasso, and that's kind of, I think where I think it's made some people really think about, about that. And for me, that was a real yeah, that's the problem, is that people aren't curious. They've decided they already know.
Okay.
And so then everything that is telling them maybe you're not right is just an obstacle that they have to try and battle through, rather than, but it's tricky, right? Because in order to really achieve something disruptive, you've got to have a vision, and you've got to be prepared to stick at it. But the line between vision and delusion is very thin.
Exactly.
Right. And so, it's those things of, you got to back yourself, but also not take yourself too seriously. And that's where a lot of the work that we do is in that ideation and validation space. It's so how do we know? How do we find out? How do we get answers? How do we make sure that we've gotten enough answers to know that this is worth trying? Because all we're trying to do is answer our first question to get to our second question. We're always, then it's a new hypothesis. It is a new, how are we going to test this? And that's the resources when you see, look at a Meta, a Google, those bigger organizations where they really have a functioning, product roadmap and development cycle, is that they're working out, how can we test this? The difference is, and this is where I think a lot of the messaging that early stage founders goes wrong, is that they say, just build it and ship it. If I'm at Meta or Google, I might have a project that's got a few $1 million behind it, and we're only doing that to throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. And so people will be like, I'm doing that, but they've put their only $50,000 into that thing that they're going to throw against the wall and see if it sticks. And then when it doesn't, they're
they'll move on and figure out.
They go nuts, really, because then you're that kind of desperation that comes into it, where it's this didn't work, and I don't have time to rethink it. And so they will then try and find somebody that's got the magic wand to make their mistake work. So,
to quote an example, when Microsoft launched their the music player after iPod came out, I keep forgetting the name.
Oh, yeah.
They invested a lot of money.
Zune.
Zune.
Zune. Yes.
Zune.
Yeah.
And when Zune came out, there were not many takers, right? And it went back. And if I remember right, their only unique value proposition, apart from music on board from the iPod, is that in iPod, if you remember, you can't put privacy was strictly prohibited. You can't copy a song from a friend and put it out there, and your music has to be managed in the iTunes library. But what Microsoft said is, guys, you connect the device, opens up the Windows Explorer, and you can see the songs, put any songs you want, and you can start hearing. That was their only USP. It didn't go anywhere, and finally they shelved it.
Yeah. That reminds me of, I think, a lot of things that I see where there are things that on the surface think, oh yeah, people will want that.
Correct.
Because, a lot of people in the early days of iPod really didn't like the fact that you couldn't put your own songs on there. But how do you then work out? Are people actually willing to leave that ecosystem for that one thing.
Correct.
And a great example of it is there's a few things that I get pitched at least once a month, right? One of them is some kind of LinkedIn replacement. Right.
Oh yeah,
and
even
so and
yesterday also somebody pitched me the same idea.
Yeah, and the or it might be like a more broader social media thing, and the premise is always people don't like all the ads. People don't like that their data is for sale. People want more control over that. So we're going to create this space for this particular community, and we're not going to have ads. We're not going to sell their data. And so what does that mean? That means that they're going to pay for it.
Correct. I
And
was just about to get there.
nobody has actually demonstrated yet, as much as everybody will say, I hate the ads, I don't like that my data is
Correct.
there, etc. No one's found that thing yet that people are actually willing to pay for to remove it. Because what are you saying? You're saying, hey, no ads, come pay for this. There's no ads, no data. Also, no one is here.
Yeah.
Right?
True. True.
And so you're then and so it's this like false positive of a problem we're solving, because there are things that everybody will agree, yeah, it's a real pain in the ass, or I really hate that. But motivation, willingness to buy, motivation, which because it's change, you're improving things, but you're asking people to make a change. And this is where a lot of SaaS goes wrong, is that we have one feature that's better than the systems that people are currently using, and we expect them to ditch that whole thing for our one better feature and then a bunch of bloatware around it. And at the end of the day, they're going to look at, well, yeah, everyone hates the system they're using currently. Everyone would love to get rid of it, right? But those incumbent systems take decades sometimes to dislodge. It's not until the kind of legit falls over. I've dealt with stuff in government where literally it was like, we have to replace this now because the people that can fix it are dying of old age. Like we're rolling them out of retirement every time something goes wrong. But we've waited until they're like in the nursing home before we finally like, okay, we'll replace this now. Right. And everybody's hated it for 30 years, but nobody has been willing to take on the pain of replacing it. And, and it's the same with those incumbent platforms. Like, now interestingly, one that I think has become an incumbent is like some of the Atlassian stuff.
Okay.
Right. That like take Jira, as an example. Like I'm a product person. I love Jira. Right. But it actually doesn't work for a lot of organizations.
Correct.
Yeah. Because if you're not actually working in a certain methodology, and people are not actually using it across the organization, that it kind of creates more pain than it solves. Because if you don't have leaders in there and everyone's not adhering to a process, then you have a lot of chaos agents running around mucking it up. So a lot of people will go, oh, Jira, and roll their eyes. But there's not the amount of work it is to dislodge that from an organization. When you think about the ecosystem that it's in, if they're using those products, they're not automatically going to take your product that does that little bit better and ditch the whole ecosystem. They're going, pay for new licenses, retrain everyone, etc. But that is the unique value proposition that people often are running on. So we do this one thing better. I had one a little while ago that was like, this is going to replace Excel because it does this better. And it was like that. I mean, just saying replace Excel would make a lot of people incredibly angry, because people who love Excel really love it. But that sort of thinking that is just not logical.
When you say, I mean, one specific thing will change. I mean, did you use Superhuman email?
Somebody put me off it. And I think it might have been you.
No.
Oh, you like it?
I don't.
Oh, you don't? Okay, no. I think that, yeah. I was looking into it, and then I read somebody.
If it's on a YouTube one channel with a US two girls, I was the one who was having a debate. So I still need to talk to absolute users who love the product. I keep experimenting with new products,
Yeah,
Scotty,
of course.
and I really love. I mean, I'll pay 1 month and I'll just see if it works. It works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So I try Superhuman. I went back 2 3 times, and I have 3 email IDs. They don't have a centralized email box. And second thing is, every email account is a tab, and if you have 2 3 tabs, it becomes very slow. And I proved it to Superhuman, and I was posting screenshots there. And Superhuman was least interested. I mean, Rahul Vora, the CEO, he keeps sending emails on this thing. I try replying and seeing if anybody would respond. I'm like, I think they've reached a critical mass where they're very happy to do that. I wish them luck. I mean, no offenses meant.
I definitely know people that swear by it,
Uh,
right? You know,
yeah.
and so, but it is one of those things that I'm like you. I love new things, but I actually have to restrain myself from, because often it's like it's really like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, right? Like, you know, there is no perfect solution to this stuff. So I used to use another one, and I've just gone back to using Gmail with different profiles now.
I finally stick to Apple Mail. The best. It works for me. Red flag, green flag, blue flag, perfectly works. If you're a color person, I would say go back to Outlook.
1990s called and they want their emails.
No, I mean, again, nothing against them. It's sleek and it's fine, but not everybody is a keyboard person. Point number one.
Yes.
Point number two, I need a better way of managing my emails, which I don't think everybody is saying. So when a new email client comes and says we are going to work for your workflow, they don't. We adapt to their workflow and become loyal customers of them. Instead of that, I'm very happy. Mail will come, read, put it in a folder, send, delete, done.
Yeah.
Keep it very simple.
Oh, delete? I don't delete anything. So that's where Gmail has really. I think I remember back in the day. With Outlook, where I would like get my inbox empty by the end of the week, and
I used to do it end of the day.
Oh,
every day. This is one thing I took away from my first boss and my mentor. I still, continue to have conversations with him. Every day before he sleeps for the night, his inbox will be zero.
I will say, working in schools, that's impossible, because as well as all the emails that you get, all the stuff that you're copied on as well. Like, my wife has been a primary principal for a number of years, and when I look at her inbox and see the number of unread emails, I get nauseous. But now, like with Gmail, like I don't want anything unread in my inbox. But I don't delete anything because it's all there, and actually, particularly now with like Gemini and that sort of thing, where you can kind of say it's getting better and better at going, hey, go through and find. So I've been, predominant 14 years I spent with Cerner, and their Outlook guys and Microsoft guys. So what I used to do is every year create a new PST. In PST, that file, 2005, 2006, 2007. And in that, I create 4 quarters, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. And last day of the quarter, I pull the entire mailbox and put them there. So it's done, archived. So my inbox is clear. So, and what I used to do, and even I continue to do now, is color code. If I'm in a CC, it'll come in a different color. But if I'm in a 2, it comes in a different color. So that catches my attention. If I'm in 2, then that means I need to get the priority and things like that. So anyway, these are all coming back to the features and everything. But again, going back on, the long-term perspective and the research, what one needs to do. I think there are many examples, but the classic recent example is ChatGPT, right? They started in 2011. Right, slowly as a research organization, not-profit organization, and everything. And one day they launched an AI agent, and that changed the world forever. And unfortunately, today everybody talks about AI, but nobody understands AI. There are only few people who really get the length and breadth of AI, but remaining all, the more conversations I have, I'm refraining to use the word AI because many people think AI is automation. It's become a nonsense word.
Yeah.
And so when someone says to me, I'm building an AI product, I say, okay, now explain to me what it does without saying AI.
Oh, you ask that? I ask, tell me which model are you using?
Well, I'm just like, so what is it? Because if that's the problem, because sometimes the answer is, well, people don't really know what to do with AI, so we're helping them, whatever. I'm like, that is not a thing, because now everything, like my cereal has AI in it, right? Like it's not everything's now with new. It's like new and improved on a product, right? Like what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything.
Correct.
And a lot of the machine learning pieces that we've been using for years, there's a big difference, right, between that really transformative AI that is, if you look at med tech, some stuff in agriculture, that sort of thing, where it's transformational. It is really taking things that were super manual or slow, and like I've been looking at something that is using AI to keep tabs of diabetics' feet for predicting sores, diabetic sores, that sort of thing. I've got somebody that I've worked with who has a satellite AI that takes satellite pictures of olive groves to assess tree health and give like olive growers immediate, like, this tree is in distress, that sort of thing. Another one where they're using AI to track the weight of cows, so that because taking them to be weighed stresses them out and they lose weight. So now they walk them over this platform. They've got a chip in their tag, goes to a satellite, and basically, you get a printout of when they're ready to eat. Right. So I mean, like I mean, if the cows work this out, they may try and sabotage it. But like we're relying on them, not being smart enough. So that stuff is truly transformational. All the like, I'm making an AI chatbot.
For what?
I mean, it's things that, unless I feel like a lot of that now is like it's way too late to market, because it's only for people where their own, either their own capacity or their own internal IT capacity hasn't worked out how to do that yet. And most things, I feel like they're like way too complicated to, rather than just that, let's find one thing that this could do really well that would be a game changer, and work out how we integrate with other platforms or products, because everything's a subscription model.
Good.
Right? And that's where a lot of this stuff just falls down. It's like, how many AI chatbots are people going to subscribe to?
Got it.
Or even as a business, are they going to be prepared to integrate with? So
and Scotty, my experience, none of this, everybody is jumping on the bandwagon of AI, but nobody is solving the problem 100%. I mean, for my YouTube channel, I wanted to create shorts, and I've tried and tested many tools from $20 to $60, and nobody is helping me realize what I'm seeing here come on the screen. I have to compromise to what they have in their database.
Of course.
See, this is where I feel that the word is being misused as much as possible. And I mean, tell me something. Aeroplanes and frequent flyer programs have been in existence for a long time. I still remember, I traveled a little bit from 2007 to 17, quite frequently. And I stuck to one airline. And whenever I buy my ticket, automatically an aisle seat is allocated on my name. Is that not AI? It's my preference, right? It's a simple thing. And if it's available, it's putting me in the seat. They know Hari likes to sit in the middle of the aircraft and he doesn't like to go to the back, and it's putting me on the aisle seat on the first row, on the left or the right side. Simple.
Well, I mean, I guess most people had not really heard or thought about AI until ChatGPT. So they look at the generative AI side, and they're like, that's AI.
See, but Scotty, what about IBM Watson, right? It went...
I'm not old enough to know what that is or not.
See, they have conceptualized
for the kids out there. Explain what IBM Watson.
Right. But,
Yeah.
but if you ask me, they are the pioneers. They just didn't go commercial. And ChatGPT came and then Claude came.
I don't
Tuck,
know
tuck,
what
tuck.
that is. I don't know what IBM Watson is.
The first AI LLM, which was 2005, 2001. Yeah.
Okay.
They're the first
Yeah.
guys to use
Do you know there are
words.
people listening that weren't even born then, right?
I know. I know. So this is more for the youngsters and the
That's what I'm
first
saying.
time entrepreneurs.
Yeah, explain it to me like I'm 5.
I'm saying, so if you're an entrepreneur, you're listening, just focus on your idea and look at how meaningfully
Yes.
you can do it. And somebody, I mean, to close the point, what you mentioned, somebody comes and says, Hari, nobody has done this till now. I have only one simple quote for them. There are no more new ideas in this world. All we are doing is process enhancement.
Yeah.
Simple.
One thing that early on that I thought about was I'm so glad that I'm not in product like in our organization right now, because the number of people that we're running around going, we need AI, we have AI. But you'd be like, yes, we have AI.
Scotty, I'll come to the next part where I want to ask you, how important is cognitive dissonance? How do I help my team, the founding team, come out with contradicting ideas to validate my idea?
That's such a big question.
Correct.
Really. I think that culturally, even in a small team, how people view differences of opinion, and conflict make a huge difference to whether or not you can be successful. Because if conflict or disagreement is seen as inherently bad and to be avoided at all costs, then people will not say what they think. The leader, whereas if you welcome that, it's that learning mindset, right? And part of, I guess, with product thinking, what we're doing is we're trying to prove ourselves wrong. We're working out like our best guess, and then and a lot of people treat that like, okay, how am I going to go and find the evidence that backs up what I already think? Whereas when you can stay agnostic to, like, we might be wrong, and if what we really want to do is solve this problem and find a way to grab the market while doing it, then we want to know now. And so, but I don't think that you can, if you have a leader that is not prepared to be wrong, if you have a leader that is not prepared to have other people point out holes in things to them, then you're screwed. I listened to something a while ago about a company in the US that has like won an incredible amount of patents for a novel technology. And the leader, when asked why, said, because when I come in on Monday with a brilliant idea and I map it all out on the board, anybody in the room has permission to poke holes in it. And if they poke a hole in it, that means it's not going to work. I'm not going to fight them. I will rub it off the board and then we try again. So that you've got to be willing to test stuff and fail fast, work out what that looks like. And also, I think one thing I find that, like with founders in particular, once you have got a little bit of success, or even before you do, if people have to be the expert in every room,
they can't.
Like then you're not going to get anywhere. I've worked with male bosses that would explain breastfeeding to women as an authority, and that those things that you're just like, what are you talking about? One thing that like I'm working constantly with things that I certainly couldn't explain, but I think that's where that tolerance of ambiguity comes in, to where like I understand what I need to know. Particularly like I've worked with some people that have got a patent for this amazing new kind of rechargeable battery. Solar battery, and the inventor is this amazing woman. Like I would occasionally just say, I just want to make sure that you know that, like, when I go, I don't understand 90% of what you're saying.
Yeah.
But the 10% I need to know, I'm following along. So just so you know, like, I'm not that I'm not going, oh yes, I understand all that, because like she's just like ridiculously smart in that space. And I think a lot of people are not actually comfortable
Mhm.
with not knowing. Like, before when you were like, Watson, I don't know what that is,
Mhm.
or whatever. Like, how often do you people just go, oh,
Mhm.
and like sometimes it doesn't really matter, right? But like where we're not, again, not curious. I don't need you to tell me, how to market my thing. I invented
True, true.
it.
I mean, even I don't know many things. So, when it comes to AI agents, everybody started using ChatGPT. It became now people don't use Google; they use ChatGPT for searches. It became like that.
I know that I find a little bit
W-
alarming, but
Right. So now, over a period of time, I tested Claude, I tested Perplexity, and everything. I have finally decided, okay, this is the investment I'm going to make. So, ChatGPT, Claude, and Perplexity, I've taken annual subscription. But 95% of the time, I stick to Claude.
Me too.
The only reason for me is Claude takes whatever the research and blah 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 blah. Their model is that, and it gives you the answer. ChatGPT, it has to accept that it is a machine, and don't think that you are the most smartest in the room. So ChatGPT, if you ask, if it'll give you an answer, but you know what I think about it, and it'll give you its opinion. I don't care about your opinion. I have a question, you answer me. That's the only reason I stick with Claude, because Claude gives you that references with the, if you have any technical questions or a theoretical question, it goes back into research papers, does the proper research. It doesn't open its mouth until you ask it. So,
See, one of the things that I use AI, like I usually do use Claude, will be to tear stuff apart.
correct.
To kind of say, okay, here's what I'm thinking. First of all, help me kind of articulate this. And now I might actually like flip to something else to say, hey, Gemini, tell me what you don't like about this sort of thing. And even sometimes like with communication, because most of the stuff I'm doing is transcripted, where I'll use it to kind of analyze my own communication, that sort of thing. Like that, so I'm asking, and I actually like that bit of. But I have given Claude a nervous breakdown at one point because I like I think when you go too long in a chat, it starts to degrade.
Correct.
And it was, I was just saying, okay, yep, that's great. Just write that now, and it kept kind of going. Okay, here's 2 paragraphs. Do you want me to continue? And finally I was like, you don't need to ask me anymore. I want you to do the whole thing. Don't ask again. And then it did it again. And then I was like, Claude, you're doing it again. And then it was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then it kept doing it and then apologizing. And I was like, I killed Claude. I
know. Claude tends to do that. After 6-7 times, it says start a new conversation. Start a new conversation.
Yes, yeah, and you realize like actually you have to. But this one, it was just this kind of weird loop where I was like, "Are you okay? Like, have I hurt your feelings?" Like,
so these keep. Again, coming back to our ideation, I'm realizing the more I talk to you. It looks like this podcast will run for a couple of hours, but again, we have this thing. From let me put it this way: you have single founders, you have 2 founders, you have 3 founders, you have 4 founders. What I don't care about 4 founders and above, because they have enough people to brainstorm and fight among themselves. But what is your best suggested methodology to go through the ideation phase for single and 2 founder teams predominantly?
I think whether you're on your own or you have a co-founder, in ideation, you've got to be working with other people. You've got to be. Now, I think that some people go from I know everything to once you realize what you don't know, they seek too much advice from too many different people and they're trying to implement it all. But to me, like developing your skill in ideation, in product thinking, like doing it from that really customer focused space of it's not a science, but there is actually a method to it. Right? Inviting people to critique what you're doing, and then working out, okay, what are we asking right now? what's the next step? That how are we going to find that out? And then restarting again. What's our new hypothesis? The Y Combinator. We're ultimately looking for a problem that is frequent, it's intense, and people are willing to pay to fix it, right? And so that's it. I think you can. People can do that on their own if they're. You might need somebody to like talk to about what you're doing. You might, if you've got good skills, be able to work that out by going and having enough conversations. But I think the risk with 1, 2, 4, or whatever is that you only talk to yourselves, and you're not actually ultimately talking to who you think your customer is. That's something I find really challenging about like startup networking and that sort of thing. Is that like for me, I go to that stuff because it adds value to my own learning, but also that's where my ICP is, right? The people that I ultimately want to work with are there. A lot of people that go to those things, their customer isn't there. And so like, if your customer is a farmer and you're not going to anything where farmers are, you're going to the wrong stuff. Right?
Correct.
Yeah. And so, it's just questioning, asking. I think you can do that by yourself with as long as it's using really good research and having those conversations with people. To some of it depends on personality. Like I'm a big I love working with people, right? And so I naturally will lean towards I want a team around me, I want to work with someone, etc. But that's because that actually kind of gives me energy. But I have worked with some founders where it's not just that they're an asshole, right? Like it is that their own the brain, the way that they think. It's not that they're not prepared to take advice, but that actually that kind of co-founder model doesn't really work for them. And I feel like we have this cookie cutter, like, oh, you have to have a technical co-founder, you have to have whatever, and not like what works for your brain, right? But being curious, asking more questions, challenging, being prepared to challenge what you think, right? It's like any good, investigator, any good reporter. They're not just fishing for answers to support what they're trying to say. They're trying to work out if they're right, or if is there something else out there, and you don't know if you don't ask.
And do you have any strategies or thoughts or ideas on if I'm stuck during my ideation process, how do I come out of it?
Yeah. Sometimes it can be very hard to get the conversations that you want to have. And I think that there's a question that we should be asking at the start of this process is, what is it that about me and my experience as a founder that makes it make sense that I would be the person to solve this problem? If I think I'm solving a problem for this type of person and I can't find any way to talk to any of them, maybe I'm not right. Maybe I should be, focusing on something different. Again, I think it's got to be conversation. It has to be talking to people with an open mind, and that's where networking and some of the Slack groups and things that are out there, can sometimes they can just be echo chambers. But if you kind of genuinely ask for feedback, the thing that I really love about the startup community is that there are a lot of people out there that are genuinely happy to help you, genuinely happy to have a convo.
Good.
Not trying to sell you anything, like, and but are happy to kind of brainstorm ideas or become an accountability partner. But you can get stuck, right? You can get really stuck in, you're not talking to anyone, you're just kind of like pounding away trying to make the thing work. And I think knowing yourself, knowing when you are I suppose how to kind of regulate your own emotions to be able to identify when you need to get out, breathe some fresh air, go talk to some other people, or maybe just do something else for a while.
Scotty, many ideas. So, for instance, I have an idea to create an AI agent to help first-time visitors to Melbourne when you ask a couple of questions, hey, from airport, how do I get here? Blah, blah, blah. It'll be like a WhatsApp agent when I'm talking to. Now, for me, I'll do the market research and everything and all that stuff. This is just an example I've taken. It's a very dumb and small example. But when founders are thinking about an idea, I personally favor those who think not at the city or the locality level, but at least at the national level. And if you are more matured entrepreneur, or if you have had the experience of failing or building or something, look at the global perspective and how do you grow globally. How important is that thought process for a first-time founder?
It depends, obviously, on what you're building and who you're building it for. In general, I think people in Australia have to be thinking global because our market size isn't really big enough to. Look,
actually, in a couple of areas, your market size is too huge.
Yeah, sure, yeah, like for sure. Like, but when you look at a lot of the things that people are building, where there's a specific persona, and there a lot of particularly B2C stuff. We mostly work with tech-enabled projects, but we will sometimes help with market research for more of a service or a product. Not just like a new kind of bowl or something, but right. But there's times where they're just, yep, that's great, but there are not enough people in this country that would be prepared to buy that to make it make any sense financially for you to have it made, right? And so, and I think that applies to software as well. It is that either from a business perspective, what is this going to potentially look like in other industries? What does it look like in the same industry in other countries? And it's not definitely about trying to go to market for that. You got to start where you are, right? But if you sometimes when you're looking at the potential of something, does this really have the potential to be disruptive? It's probably not going to be disruptive if it only works here. But then working out like where that next market might be. Like I know that for some of my stuff, I know where, like we talked early on about, I'd love to do the product bus in India, and I was like, I got to work out how to do it here first. Like, but I know where those spaces are that we should be aiming for. But I mean, it's probably a couple of years down the track, right? Because we've got to kind of really work out, first of all, how product bus works out outside of Melbourne, which we're starting now, right? So it's getting step by step. But it is important. I think that there are obviously things where, if they're regulatory, where they may not translate well to other countries, but there may be a big enough market for it in Australia. But I think you got to think about it for sure.
Scotty, what? I mean, I purposefully am not putting across the points because I've seen the Australian market, I've seen the American market, I've seen the Indian market. India is an exception. I've seen the Asia Pac market. I've not touched South Africa. I've not studied a lot about South African market or South American market. Australia is very unique. What would you advise the first-time founders or entrepreneurs from Australia to keep in mind when they're building and the way they want to scale?
So I'm really keen to know what you think is unique about it. What I would say is I think that we are pretty risk averse to like some of the like brand new things, because our ecosystems in like particularly in B2B are not very big, right? And most people don't want to be first. They don't want to be the first person to try something, right?
I noticed it.
Yeah, they and I've had that, like in one of the ed techs I worked in, where we were going into a new state where we didn't have any clients, and we went and had a bunch of meetings with state school principals in this space, and I had one say to me, I love this. We need this. We'll be your 5th client in Queensland. Right. And, it was like, yeah, I'm not going to take the risk and be first.
The first guy.
Yep. Now, she actually ended up missing out on our first intake of 20.
Whatever.
Right. But, that piece of like, oh, we can be pretty risk averse, I think. And so that kind of conservatism, which comes into funding as well.
Correct.
Yeah, our VC, it's small. Our VCs actually don't have a lot of money, and they are very risk averse. They're not. It's not the Bay Area. They're not going to give people money to see if their idea works or not.
In spite of companies like Canva and IDEATION being brought up in, they've not brought up in Australia, they're born in Australia. So you have people who are the change makers.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it not translating into, the US or Europe, whatever it is? The money is not flowing into Australia to help. Is there anything to do with the quality of ideas which are coming from here, or do you think we need to master the subject a little bit more to get much more bigger? What's your take on that after spending all the time?
I think that it goes back to something I mentioned earlier at the start about what are your goals for the thing that you're building.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if it's not a unicorn, is it a failure to you?
Mm-hmm.
Is it something where you'd be really happy if you were turning over $50 million a year in the Australian market? Like, you don't have to. If you can find that market, you don't have to do that, right? I think that when you take Canva, take Atlassian, take a couple of the more recent Australian unicorns like Go1 and Deputy, which I've worked with both those companies. They're funded in a market that doesn't exist anymore.
They're funded?
They were funded initially in a market that doesn't exist anymore, because like Go1, as an example, 4 amazing young men that, got out there and sold the crap out of this idea, with not a lot already built, and have done an amazing job. But they got funding at a stage that in the current climate, people wouldn't fund. They would want to see revenue first. They would want to see, because we've just become so conservative here. So I think partly it's the market, partly that I think VC, it's not magic. There are, people are more gun shy from, losing money on things. Everyone wants to see traction. No one can define for you what that actually means, because it can change. you go and reach the thing that they said, we want to see this, and they're like, oh well, now we want to see this, right? Because they don't really know. So I think it's partly a lot of it in terms of why we're not seeing that same wave. I mean, it's not a big country population wise, but we don't have those funding resources, and they're so risk averse, and they're so, we know that the tiny percentage of that funding that goes to female founders, that goes to people of color, that goes to, it's so conservative, and so then you get those, I don't know, ideas that are maybe not quite as exciting.
But the best part is, even though you have the challenges, Australia is in the top 5 global markets in the world for various things to come. I mean, what's this platform? Not why am I getting Spotify? The online marketplace. You can create your own website.
Well, there's a few of those. Spotify. No, I mean Shopify.
No. Shopify.
Yeah.
So if
I always say that.
I was doing a little research, and for Shopify, Australia is the 2nd largest market.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of Shopify developers out there, right? And there's a lot of entrepreneurship here. I think that some of it is just proximity. It's a hard market to. If you look at Atlassian as an example, I mean, they had to go to, and Deputy, they had to go to the US in order to actually be able to expand,
Mhm.
right? And some of that is based on that's talent as well, because then you don't have people that are that have the experience of
Mhm.
growing, at that stage in country. So you're either importing them, which is expensive and painful,
Mhm.
or you go there, to find them and find the markets.
Mhm.
And that takes a lot, though, right? It's like you have to already be making a decent amount of money,
Mhm.
or have a decent level of funding to then go and establish an office.
Australia also has quite a few government programs
Hmm.
which support entrepreneurs and things like that. Do you think entrepreneurs are making use of them and growing? I know few use, but are they using 100%? Is the government getting back what they want to do it? Because I noticed in India we have Startup India, Stand Up India, and they're doing an amazing job. I mean, in terms of the funds coming to the small time entrepreneurs, so that they can start. They give you a small tranche for working on your idea, and then after you do the idea and do an MVP, you can ask for more money, like that.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
have to show the proof, and then slowly things add. Right.
There's some great funding, like in Victoria we have LaunchVic, which has been funded
Correct.
to fund. There's it's not a limit. It's not an unlimited bucket of money. There's still,
Okay.
it only goes to certain organizations that are running accelerators, and I think that I personally I think that our accelerator model is a little bit broken, because a lot of it is like topic of the week from different speakers, where you're getting exposure to all this stuff, but people aren't looking at, okay, what's your starting point, and where are we going to try and help you get to at that point, so you can go to all the things, meet all the people, hear all the presentations, and not actually move forward.
Okay.
In that. And that's part of, like, with Product Bus, where we are starting to run and design some accelerators, with other organizations. And then this comes back to my teaching background. I'm like, I want to know where they are at the beginning.
Correct.
And where we're going to get them to at the end.
Correct.
And that's going to be different for everybody.
Correct.
Because what I see happening is some of the people that go through these programs, at the end of it, they actually don't really have a product. They have a really slick assignment. So they can do their pitch, no problem, and it's not real enough. So I do think that we have a I mean, I could do 3 hours on how much I hate pitch nights and the way that we teach people to pitch and that sort of thing. Like because it's a it, it, it isn't real. It isn't, it's not actually celebrating learning and growth and that sort of thing. We make people pretend that they've already got it all together and they've already cured cancer, and they're just kind of, so people end up, you see. I went to a pitch night the other night, the Startup Network Female Founders pitch night. It was amazing. I'm an advisor for one of the startups that was there, and it was brilliant. It was great. I find female founders tend to be a lot more honest
and a lot more balanced.
A lot more, just a lot more honest about where they're actually at. A lot more balanced, not that kind of just hyperbole.
Correct.
Where people say things and you're like, I know you haven't done that. It's not even that. It's sometimes that it's okay, maybe you haven't done that yet, but have you even worked out really how to solve that problem? AI is a big culprit in here, right? Where people, it's like, and the AI does blah, and you're like, I don't know that AI can actually do that yet. So yeah, it's we do suffer a bit from, I think, a lack of talent helping those entrepreneurs, because when you look at a lot of people that are like working in VCs and working in those spaces, their experience is not startups.
Correct.
Like, I mean, you have people where they're running a session on founder well-being, and they're from a VC, and you look at their experience beforehand.
Correct.
And they came from PwC and NAB, and now they're running a session on founder well-being from a VC.
You're talking about running a session. I know most of the VC companies employ these fresh graduates, finance guys as the first thing. And whenever an entrepreneur goes, that fellow has zero knowledge about entrepreneurship, what it takes to build, and he has dumb questions. And I feel the investors run into negative feedbacks and run into missing out quality ideas is because they're not having the most experienced guys in the front line. I have had first line experience with two investment organizations. Then over the period of time, I realized that if all the ideas are accumulated, that's it. But the guys who get the fund are the guys who have the connects.
Yes. Well, and I think some of that comes back to that risk aversion.
Correct.
It is, and two, I think there's a lot of people out there pitching that shouldn't be pitching. They're
Correct.
they're because they're not, they either haven't done enough of the work yet, or they have an idea where the underlying commercial model is not VC fundable. VCs are looking for, at least a 10x on their investment, and so they will look at some ideas that might say, you could generate 100K a year from that. That's a lifestyle business. They're not interested. I would be very happy with that lifestyle, right? But I think we've kind of got a lot of founders out there that don't understand what VCs mean. When they say, "Oh, that sounds really interesting. Come back when you've got traction," and you have to really understand that means no.
Get it,
right? And I've met people who have not understood that and taken that as, I've got people really interested in this, so I'm going to spend more of my own money to build this thing. Whereas, I probably could have helped them in a 3-hour workshop at the beginning to go, this isn't it, right? And it's that really upsets me. It's that thing of, yes, they're adults, and yes, they ultimately are responsible for their decisions, but you can only work on the best help and advice that you have available to them. And that's a lot of the mission of Product Bus, is like, hey, let's, like, we're not going to be the loved darling of VCs, because we want people to be more real about them, and also we find those investors that are actually trying to do the work and trying to look beyond the it's 3 white private school boys, it'll be fine. They'll look great on the AFR in their branded t-shirts, and it'll all be great.
I can go on the concept of ideation, because I feel not many people have touched on the importance of ideation and how it can break or make the company. I'll shift gears a little bit and go back into building teams as a single founder, co-founder kind. But at the beginning, you did mention that we are also looking at being a fractional consultant for the startup, blah, blah, blah. Scotty, how many are open? The ideators, the founders, and things like that. How many are open to speak or engage with these experienced folks to come on board and help them to build whatever they're building, as a fractional, or as a consultant, as a part-time, whatever term they want to use? How many have you seen the founders being open to them or not being open to them?
I think that it is pretty common, particularly if you're a younger person, where it can feel threatening to have people more experienced than you working with you. And like, I advise some founders where I would choose different people to them, but what they need is somebody that they feel is more junior,
or they feel more connected.
They feel more connected, or they feel more like, I can be the boss. Right? And so it again, it's like something that only life can kind of teach you, right? Like, it's a bit of a life skill. But I think that people are starting to understand more that value. But like I said before, when you take strategy and separate it from delivery, people look at those two very differently when it comes to budget.
Got it.
A developer says it's going to cost $100,000 to build this app, and they're like, great, where do I sign? $3,000 for market research. Oh, that's a lot of money. And so, and the number of the number of founders that I meet and talk to, where they're like, oh yeah, we've got our product market fit sorted, which just you but I've learned I've got a much better poker face now to be like, and I'm delighted to be proved wrong. Delighted to be proved wrong at things, but I tend to like, it's like within 2 minutes of somebody explaining what they're doing, I've got a sense of whether it's going to work or not.
Good.
Just from a commercial model perspective. And like I said before, I am not a math person, right? But I'm usually it stuns me that I'm the person getting out the calculator a lot of the time, and going, okay, so you want to sell, you've got a two-sided marketplace, so you're not providing anything, you are just doing referrals, so you're just getting a clip on the tickets, and so the calculator says you will have to do 3 squillion tickets to make any money at all. Are there 3 squillion people in this country that even want that? It's that sometimes it just, we don't need to build anything to realize the math doesn't math. And so that's the piece where the more open people are to advice, without falling into that imposter syndrome of just like, I'm going to follow the advice of the last person I spoke to, it's hard. And that's sometimes the fractional piece. Where I see fractional for startups as really valuable is when you look at when startups get funding, and VCs will push them to build out a C-suite, and they go out and hire all the wrong people. Because they look at, oh, you used to work at Canva, and now you want to be our marketing person. That's going to be amazing.
Come on.
They can be like, oh yes, I can't wait to get back on the tools. And then they arrive and they're like, so where are the people that sit in the chairs first, so I don't have to sit in cold chairs? Right? Like, because again, they don't understand the machine that exists around them that enables them to do what they do. And so and that kind of startup fit is something that if people have no experience of that, that they really do not understand, like how little you have at that point, or like how much you have to do yourself, then they're in culture shock, they don't work out, or they just create silos within the business. And where I see fractional, when it works well, is being something that actually enables the leader to be the leader. Because the other piece of that is that the founder probably doesn't have the skills or experience to manage those people. And so they will either, try and explain their job to them, or be like, well, I don't know marketing, so yeah, whatever you say goes for a while until it doesn't work. Right. Whereas good fractional, I think, can empower leaders to grow into that, because they're also not making permanent decisions.
True.
I'm not giving you equity. I'm not or I might be giving you a tiny bit of equity, on a vesting schedule, rather than giving you 20% to come and work in my business, only to work out that we hate each other. And but you're still gonna walk away with 20%, right? You can, and that's like those things, though. It's like, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. And so you see people, and that's why, when people are like, oh, I need a technical co-founder, I'm going to give them 50% of my thing that isn't even a thing yet, before we know if we work together or not. I feel like there's better ways to do that are actually more friendly to the founder or the person who had the idea, right? But it's still early days in Australia in particular. I think that like understanding fractional as a whole, and then fractional strategists, because that's the role that we play. Like, we will do some work, like, we will do some delivery to work it out, but ultimately, we're trying to be super budget friendly, help startups or founders do as much of it as they can themselves. And so we don't want to be jumping in there and spending their money doing stuff that they could either do themselves or hire someone else to do cheaper. But it's I don't know, I feel like if you don't really have the experience at being responsible for budgets, and actually understanding like how the sausage is made when it comes to like who actually pays for this stuff, you almost have to kind of learn by realizing like, oh, we ran out of money, which is unfortunate.
Scotty, the last thing before I close down is, what advice do you have for founders who are looking at, I have couple of founders in my mind whom I'm working with right now in back in India, um, who where their products, not services, products will will definitely be accepted in Australian ecosystem. What advice you have, because you've been on other side of the world, this side of the world, I can ask you this question: what advice do you have for founders who want to bring their products into Australia?
Yeah. Um. So in the industries that I've worked in, because a lot of people will come from US, UK, India, and be like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna blow you out of the water," right? Like we're gonna, and even sometimes splash a lot of money
Correct.
at marketing, but not actually understand the ecosystem and understand the space that they're trying to sell into. And so it takes a lot longer than you think, because it's
Correct.
not just building up brand recognition.
Correct.
You can buy up, the top sponsorships at a few conferences and everyone will take your free merch, but that doesn't mean they're going to buy it. Right. But I think the biggest mistake that you can make is just landing and going everywhere and starting to hand out business cards. It's like getting those discovery conversations,
Correct.
working out who the players are, working out if there is actually a market for you in the space. Because again, like, the likelihood that somebody is not already trying to solve that problem in some way, and so it takes time. I think the other thing that is really difficult for culturally, because I grew up in the States. I've lived here longer than I've lived in the than in the States. So, and all my working life has been in Australia. So when I've worked in bigger organizations with like real Americans, I find them terrifying. Because Australia is such a non-confrontational country.
Get it.
Right? Like I've always say to my wife, you could be being run over by a steamroller and you'd be like, don't upset anyone. Like it's fine. So I think taking that time to understand culturally, like how Australia works from a sales perspective, because hard sales doesn't work at all. And like people are very adverse to feeling like they're being sold to. They're very adverse to feeling like they're being sold to by somebody who doesn't understand Australia. And you sometimes you've got to find that person that has the on the ground experience and like industry knowledge if you really want to sell. But yeah, I think the mistake people make is they land and think I'm gonna have customers tomorrow.
Correct. That's also because Australia is one of the developed nations, right? So the moment a developed nation, it goes back to US and UK and these countries. And the moment you think about those countries, oh, I put an ad on the internet and people will buy my service. But yeah, for many things, I mean, I think startup founders or ideators should not consider America as an example. I know I'm making a controversy out of it. Hope it becomes big. The reason why I'm saying it is America is a culmination of various cultures, various people, right? In the 400 million population, Native Americans, as you know, is a very small percentage now, but people like you who generational been in America, who are traditionally called the Americans. Now, I mean, you have Spanish, you have Indians, you have
no, they're trying to get rid of them.
Uh-huh.
They're trying to get rid of them. Yeah, unfortunately.
I know. But all I'm saying is, so that market has been very welcoming because I can't sell to Scotty. I'll sell to some Alan, right? So, but that's okay. I mean, everybody is in the same neighborhood, but that spoiled a lot of entrepreneurs. They think that everywhere it works.
Yeah,
and especially entrepreneurs who have not been outside their home turf. They think that, oh, if I can sell in America, I can sell everywhere else. No. America is the worst example you can take. If you can sell there, you can't sell anywhere else. So remember that. If you can't sell there, then probably you have a bigger chance to sell in other places. Because one thing, other countries, even though there are a lot of other people who come and settle, as you exactly said, the mentality, the thought process, everything is more local and things like that. So that plays a very
In
in Australia or any other country, even if you come to India, right? The local thought process is much more higher. I don't have influence of others in my thought process. Whereas if you go to the West, and if you go to America, for example, I can't use a word, you have equal number of settlements from all parts of the world. So if I can't sell to one part, I will go and sell to other part. You still have a market.
sure,
But you don't need to spend, what I mean is you don't need to spend a lot of time thinking, oh, I couldn't get into this market. But
one of the reasons why that the States is like that is because it's so fragmented. Like there's not jurisdictionally,
yeah,
that like here where we have federal
correct,
departments of
correct,
education or whatever, and like even that kind of local government focus, which ultimately is about keeping the wealth where it is, right? Means like you as a it would be like saying like the one of the councils in Melbourne, if that was a county in the US, they'd be responsible for their own police, education, etc. And they basically have the funding that they can raise from land tax to do it. So jurisdictionally, it's much more disjointed. Like there's so many banks and things there because they kind of really don't work against that sort of corporatization of everything. And in countries like Australia, where we are a lot more organized and we're a lot more consistent, what the states are responsible for, it's still at the state level. If you want to sell to, like, if we're talking businesses or organizations, you want to sell to a hospital, in Victoria, well, then you've got to work through some state level pieces to do it. You can't
correct,
just go to the next hospital,
correct,
right? And so I think that's part of where that market understanding is not there, because it isn't just, oh yeah, I'll just find the next one. Because a lot of our industries here are pretty small, right? And sometimes you might have something where we did some research for some people a while ago where they basically were like had an idea for a market that was really ultimately controlled by one business in the whole country. And so it was like, yeah, that other people have tried to do this, but then that big organization just kind of eats them up, right? And so your strategy either is don't do it or try and do it in a way where your goal is for them to buy you. But if you're going to go and try and talk to all these individual businesses and get them to buy, it's not going to happen.
True.
And so, and that's the thing where, as you said, you can't just land and go and start,
Got it.
Talking to the first whatever. You got to understand the lay of the land, because
Got
it's a lot more jurisdictional.
I would call it more community focused. Community strength is there
in Australia. Well, I mean, we have systems that extend across the nation, across a state, that are more, because they're more people focused. We have some base level of belief in this country that there's a minimum standard of living that everybody should have, and that we understand that if you have a bit more, I mean, obviously, when you have a lot, then you work out how to not have to contribute at all. But for the people that have some of my tax dollars are going to make sure that people that are diagnosed with cancer tomorrow can have treatment whether they have money or not, and that we think that's a good thing. And so it's a very different model from capitalism.
Makes sense. So predominantly, I mean, it's not a market where, as you said, land up and keep knocking on the door and just start going and talking to people, but it's more understand the lay of the land, understand the culture, understand how you sell,
the market size. Just understand the market size, like, because there's times where you're like, we are working with a logistics robotics piece. It's really cool, but they're right now we're trying to test it out in regional carriers where they turn over like a minimum of 1,000 items a day, right? And so when you go to the regions, in some regions there's only one business in that whole region that actually qualifies. And so if you just went, there's 400 couriers in Australia, we can sell to all of them, this is our market size, I put it on the screen, that's actually not the case. You go and then, realize, well, even we were doing some of it just like on Google Maps and going, oh, that looks pretty scary. I don't think they were like, it's deceptive.
Mhm.
I think and the population isn't big enough to just say, oh, we'll just go to the next guy.
Correct. I mean, I was just talking. Melbourne is 2 million population and Bangalore is 12.5 million population. So
what about how do they compare area wise?
Australia is 3 times bigger than India.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So because that's the thing we cannot.
2.5 times bigger, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. 2 or 2.5 times. And America is 4 times bigger than India. I mean, land.
Yeah. That's the thing that we can't appreciate in Australia often, is that it's like, you have that population size and often it'll be on a smaller patch of land than,
Get it. How many, you have 4 cities on the East Coast? Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth,
Cairns. On the West Coast or East Coast is like Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne, Adelaide.
Correct.
Yeah.
And Perth.
Perth is a different country.
Darwin.
I would rather have clients in LA than Perth, because it just time zone wise.
Correct. But you're 1 hour different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, New York is East Coast US is the worst.
Get it.
But then like WA is because for half the year it's 3 hours.
I get it.
And it's so it's not very big, and a lot of those cities like Adelaide isn't a very big city. Perth isn't a very big city.
Yeah, get it.
I mean, they're great. Like, I'm very grateful to live here.
Yeah, like that's about it. Only the east and the west. West only Perth and one more place is there. Otherwise, Darwin North, and we are done.
Darwin. Well, I mean, the thing about those regional areas, Canberra too, but I mean, Canberra's a different kettle of fish, is that you can get foothold in those spaces, but you have to really go and be there. Because if you're prepared to go to Darwin, if you're prepared to go to Perth and like have some sort of footprint there, then people, will love you.
Correct.
Because a lot of stuff, people don't want to go.
Correct.
And I mean, it's expensive, right? Like it is like for us as we're trying to expand into other cities, like we've got work in Queensland but WA is like a few years out, because it really is like we could go to Singapore more easily, honestly. Like, and sorry, WA, you're beautiful. But it is there's a huge gap, right, of just space where there are no people.
3 hours of flying time, no people.
Yeah, no people. Well, and like it's that sort of thing that I think, and that's something else I think often when people come to Australia they don't understand is how different
the cultures are,
the capitals are, and how and how markets can be really different in the different cities. Like take education as an example, like in independent schools, in Sydney there's so many of them, they're actually pretty collaborative. They do a lot of like stuff together, and if you kind of have a showcase at one school, other people will come. Go to Canberra or even in Melbourne, where it's just more competitive, and so they don't play as nicely together. And so just having that school doesn't mean that the next school is going to jump on board, in quite the same way.
True.
And then Perth's a different kettle of fish again. And so I think people coming to Australia, you might assume that the strategy is going to be the same in every state.
No,
but yeah, and in some places it may not actually be, your market size may not be big enough to be able to afford to try and sell there, because then what you're going to do, like think about just from like a support perspective, right? If we are a Victorian based company and we're providing support, the moment that we go to WA, we've got to have people on, that we're paying more money for support, because we have to have people open WA office hours, which means that we've got people, starting at 7 and not finishing until 7 or 8. So it's a cost piece that often, picking up one client in a faraway place can actually be like not a good move financially.
Correct. So okay. So if one is coming to Australia, they need to understand the lay of the land, understand the way people will accept your product or service, and understand that every state, every city has its own culture, fit into it, and then build on it. Well, Scotty, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. It was great chatting
I
to
want
you.
I predominantly want to spend time on the ideation piece because I've never spent or talked to anybody who's such an ideation expert, and I wanted this to come out so that there are a lot of people who are wanting to build products, and that would play a very important role. As I said, many podcasts focus on I've been there, done that, but
Yeah.
I want to hear the journey of a person who's doing it
Yeah.
and what they're going through, so that I can resonate with it. For example, the least example you said, Watson or whatever. Hey, many people are not born that time, correct?
Yeah.
Right? So if I talk about it, there's no point. But if I talk about ChatGPT or Claude, people are more connected and trying to understand, relating to how they are searching and how they are working and how they're using the tool and things like that. Yeah.
A lot of, as you said, a lot of those examples, and there's a lot to, success stories are really interesting to listen to, right? But they aren't templates.
Correct.
And what I found, as I mentioned before, having worked in startups, well, like scale ups, is that when I became a founder, there's a lot of stuff I didn't know anything about. And I started reading and listening. And a lot of it, I feel like I'm starting a degree in like third year. Because we're talking about unicorns or whatever. And like, I don't even have a donkey. Right? Like and that's the stuff I think we don't talk about enough. And a lot of stuff, you can go to panels and things where people talk about what they've done and nobody talks about where the money came from.
So forget about money, Scotty. See, take it my example, right? A chance trip a year and a half ago through my old client. They had something and I came. That evening, I was bored. I started looking up startup ecosystem and ended up at the Startup Network's event that evening. And somebody asked a question about India, and I just answered it. And people started saying hello and everything. And then I started. The next 10 days I was here, I saw there were 10 events happening, and I ensured I go for every event. And every trip of mine, I try to attend as many events as possible. But this trip of mine, I'm not able to because there are not many events which are happening. Only next weekend, Startups is happening. I'm there. But I can't, honestly speaking, I don't think there is a need for me to move to Australia. I'm happy where I am, where I live, Bangalore. But I'm making that effort to come every 2 months for your point in saying, Hari, you need to be local. That's the culture of Australia. And that's where I'm trying to fit in by ensuring that I come, meet the same people, say hello, so that I'm not lost out in the whole thing. Nobody talks to me about this journey. Trust me, if this model becomes successful, there'll be people talking, how did you do it?
Yeah.
How did you go? But talk to me now, I'll tell you the pain. I'll tell you the pain of getting a TFN, registering your company is a breeze in Australia. But getting a TFN as a non-PR or non-Australian citizen is the biggest entrepreneurship.
Well, can you even do that?
Yeah. I can. And it's
legally?
hidden in the government website. So, the unfortunate thing is it's not as easy as you say, and nothing is open on the website. You have an option, apply for TFN as a non-resident. You go there, genuinely download the document, fill it up, provide all the information, send it. Then starts the trouble. Then they don't respond. You call them, you're online for half an hour, 1 hour. Usually your TFN takes about 15 days to come. Yeah, if you're new to Australia, you've been here for long, so you must have done. Otherwise, new one, you apply in 15 days, it's in your house. It's not a big deal. Okay. I took 6 months because once I sent, they didn't respond. Not by email, not by phone. So I had to call them. Then they said, you know what? You didn't send us 2 forms. I said, where is it written? Okay, do one thing. Go to this
Australian
website.
Government, anything.
Go to that website. And the best part is it's not a menu drop down I missed. I have to search for a form number. How will I know a form number of a different country? So they gave me both. I got that done. I couriered it. Again, silence. When I came again, I called them and they said, oh, you know what? Actually, you have to get it attested by the Embassy of Australia. I said, okay, I'm here. Can I go? No. Go back to India.
Yeah.
Go to Embassy of Australia and do that. Okay, chalo. I went to Embassy of Australia, got it attested, then sent. Now at least they can send me an email or snail mail saying, Hari, your TFN is done. High priority, please call us. Your TFN is on hold. But they don't charge you anything for all these things.
No. Yeah, it's just
what
bureaucracy.
And one fine morning, 4:30 a.m. India time, I picked up the phone. I said, let my bill hit the roof. I'm going to nail this down today. 58 minutes I waited on the line. I said, I got this email. Oh, we just wanted to personally welcome you to the TFN number and we want to share the number and that's about it. Thank you so much. And here is your TFN. Guys, you could have just sent me an email. I spent 1 hour on the phone because you said it's high priority and everything. And it got... So these are the journeys, right? So there is a reason why I registered my TFN so that I could create the company here. And when I work with clients, because like India, Australia has a lot of government funds which should not go out of the physical boundaries of Australia. So when I offer my services, the billing will be here locally and I pay taxes here. Now, thanks to the bilateral agreement between India and Australia, I pay tax here. I don't need to pay tax home. If I'm taking the full money out, I pay tax in India. I just need to file the form saying that the tax has been paid. That's about it. So these are the journeys, right? People don't know that. Once you get there, then they realize, oh, okay, how was it and all that stuff. By that time, rules must have changed. This is the time they should know because I'm in the present continuous tense and not the past tense.
Yes, I think. I'd have to say, compared to the US, getting stuff done here is so much easier. But it is still like you can just kind of get into that like cycle of like, oh, we need another form, we need another whatever. But at least you can do most of it online or on the phone.
Okay.
And the US, my most recent experience, my dad passed away and my sister lives in Australia as well. So we had to go and sort out everything. And we were there for a month and half of it was running around to places repeatedly where it was like, oh, we need this form. Oh, can you email it? No, you have to come in.
Yeah.
And it was like that partly because things are a lot more segmented. There's not as many kind of big government organizations actually.
It's not overcomplicated.
Things. No, it's so then it's like you're dealing with individual things, but also people where they're like, they just don't have stuff online, or it's you still. A lot of people in the States that still get paid with a paper check, right? Like you're.
True.
Yeah,
True.
And like so, trying to deal with like my dad's just like retirement fund and all of that was like trying to explain to people, I don't live here.
Yeah.
And like once I leave this time, I'm not coming back. So
where do you live?
Yeah. It really, well, yeah, that's a whole other podcast.
No, 5 years ago, I went to Kansas City back just to see the hotel guy. And he came, hey, hi, buddy, what's up, man? What's up and everything. So where are you from? I said, I'm from Bangalore. So what brings you here? I said, I'm just visiting friends. I used to live here and I went back. So where do you go back? I said, I went home. Where's home? Bangalore. Where's Bangalore? India. Which side? Is it New York or San Francisco? I said, you know what? It's exactly 1 hour driving distance from New York, down south. I'm between Washington and New York. Close the topic. There's no point in explaining to him I had to be on a flight for 17 hours to get home.
We had this when my dad had bought a car very recently before he passed away. And when a friend of ours said, look, there's no car, because this was like right after COVID. So they'll buy it back. And so we went to find out and we explained, we live in Australia. We are going to drive this car while we're here, but then we would like to sell it when we leave. And he was like, how much is it going to take for you to leave the car here today?
Ah.
And then we were like, well, we can't do that because we need a car. And he was like, well, I mean, what do you mean? How do you not have a car? How did you get here? And I was like, we're from Australia. We didn't drive over the ocean. Like, it's, but yeah.
I know. First world problems.
Oh, very. Yeah, very. It's just, but the thing is, population-wise, it's such a big country that, like, population-wise, you can, and this overall general knowledge about the world is not very high.
Yeah, I like it. But I mean, see, in a way, it's a blessing, Scotty, if you ask me. In India, everybody knows how to resolve. Everybody knows how to resolve the war. Everybody knows how to resolve hunger problems in Africa. Everybody knows. There's a famous film dialogue also on this. But in America, city news is the county news. National news is the state news. International news is Washington news. Done. That's it. That's the border. That's international. All doors closed. I was listening to a podcast sometime and this like, do you know how many people watch the India-Pakistan cricket match when compared to NFL? And that guy was like, half of NFL? He said, 10 times more of NFL is the viewership for India-Pakistan cricket match. So he's like, what game is that? Go and search on YouTube, India-Pakistan cricket match. And 10 to 20 times more is the viewership for that match. And NFL has 30 million. These guys have 1 billion people watching the cricket match.
Crazy.
So people don't get it. Anyway, Scotty, thank you so much for taking time. I'm sorry once again for a little delay. And I'm sure we can do a series of podcasts and, make a subject matter expertise out of that.
100%. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Scotty. I should say that. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye.